Hello, everybody. This is Catholic Dad, episode number 88, Gun Control Part 2. So, the last video I gave, it was essentially about the horrors of Soviet communism and how guns probably would have remedied the entire situation, and it probably couldn't have occurred without the seizure of guns and the domination of other people with their firearms. And I just wanted to relate some, people don't think it could happen here. And so it could, and it could very much so, but I wanted to tell some stories. So I remember I was swimming in I was in a swimming pool in Disney World, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago or something like that. And there was this British man that I was talking to, and we were talking about his business. He was in the propane business in England. And we had a good time talking and talked about my kids and his family and so on and so forth. But then he turns to me and he says, "You know what the problem with America is?" And I kind of like that, because it's like, game on, let's talk about this, because I kind of want to know what it is too. And he says, "Guns. You have too many guns." I said, "Time out. Too many goons?" I said, I've known a lot of British people, and I think you probably have more goons than we have, And he goes, "No, not goons, guns, And so he's talking about guns, that we have too many guns. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a matter of opinion. But nonetheless, he's like, "Why do you have so many guns?" And I said, "You don't really know, do you?" And he said, "No, why do you guys have so many guns?" And so I told the story to him about the Battle of Lexington and Concord, when King George III essentially ordered the British soldiers to march on the militia, basically the farmers in America, to go seize their munitions, and that the farmers said, "No, not on this day." And the Old North Bridge in Lexington and Concord, it was really just kind of a beautiful sight. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's where a bunch of gnarly farmers said no to the Imperial Army of Great Britain, and they fired upon them. And it was really kind of a macabre scene, because once they killed the British soldiers, which they did, they buried them, and there was plaques to them and honoring them as service to their country and service to the king. And I think that it was kind of it's an interesting scene. But to say it can't happen here, like Soviet-style communism, I don't think anybody really knows what could happen here. To say that like we're morally superior, or we know more than the Soviets did, or the Russians, or anybody that's succumbed to communism, the Chinese and the Cambodians and the Venezuelans, and you name the Czech Republic, Lithuania, Latvia, Slovakia, I would probably say on a moral level, in terms of moral compass, in terms of a level of courage and hardness, I think Americans are far weaker mentally in terms of courage, and far weaker in terms of being able to persevere against hardship than the Russians were, for sure. I think the Western democracy has delivered so much affluence to us that we don't worry about our food supplies anymore. We don't worry about our safety or security or anything else. That life is just some hedonistic pleasure all the time, and that we don't really fear for our future at all. And when that happens, even biology can teach this to you, that when you challenge a body, and you challenge a heart, or you challenge somebody to do better, you will do better. That trials and tribulations and hardships make you stronger. They make you stronger-willed and even physically stronger. And so to say it won't happen here, that Soviet-style communism couldn't happen here, no, it couldn't if we have our firearms. But if you did seize all the firearms in America, I mean, we already have people in this country that have great power that are speaking about a 90% tax on the wealthy. And that number could come down to encompass almost everybody in our nation quite quickly, particularly if we don't have the capacity to say no to our government. And that's just taxation systems. I mean, everybody wants free education. They want free daycare. They want free preschool. They want free this, free that, free thing. And so those are the 10 planks of communism. I don't know if you've ever read them, but I should probably read them myself. But we already have like 7 of the 10. And so Soviet-style communism could happen here. And I've always been kind of this right-wing nut kind of conspiracy guy, and I always spoke up throughout my entire life. And the reason why I know I'm right, that I'm onto something when I said it could happen here, is because I've had three separate people in my lifetime tell me that, Paul, you as an American, you understand more than everybody else, or you're the only one I've seen that gets it, that the communism's bad. One was a physician from Romania, and she lived under Ceausescu. Another one was a young man who didn't know her, who was Kazakhstanian, and he told me, you seem to get it, you understand. And then another was a Cuban physician, and none of them ever met each other, none of them knew each other, but all three kind of told me that I get it, and I understand what communism's like. And I remember in the Romanian physician, she lived under Ceausescu, was like the worst of the communist-style dictators in all of Europe. I mean, he was horrible. He was assassinated on Christmas with his wife too, by the people. The people rose up against him and eventually killed him. That's how bad this dude was. And then somebody would espouse some kind of liberal thought or liberal think or centralized think or the group think or whatever it is in our residence lounge, and they would leave, and she would say to me, "Are you ready, comrade? Are you ready for what's next?" And kind of wink at me, and yeah, I am ready. Anyway, so if you don't think Soviet-style communism could happen here in America, if our guns are seized or we don't have widely available firearms, I think you're nuts, because I think in terms of our hedonism, in terms of our moral compass, in terms of our moral strength and our capacity to persevere in times of hardship, I think we are far weaker than the Soviets ever were. And I think, in fact, probably even the Venezuelans and, Western democracy has weakened our minds and our hearts and our souls and everything else. And so, yeah, we've become very soft and we've lost our courage. And so I don't think we, if a strong man stepped up and we didn't have firearms, that we would put our lives on the line to stop it. I don't think it would happen. So I think the reason why socialism or communism wouldn't happen here is simply because we have an armed populace, a capacity to resist it if it were to happen. Now, a lot of countries, in terms of gun control, you hear people like, oh, look in Canada, they don't have a ton of firearms and they have no murders, and yeah, that may be true in England and some European states, although their murder levels are notching up as they invite the third world in. But nonetheless, they say, oh, look, we have so few firearms, and oh, by the way, we have so few murders. Well, to the Europeans out there, our countries bailed you out as you irreparably murder each other time and time again. And the millions upon millions of people you murdered because of your seizure of firearms. And for you to turn around, by the way, and tell me, tell us, we shouldn't have firearms because you don't have firearms and you don't have many murders. You guys last century had 100 million murders, right? Over 100 million murders at the hands of government on an unarmed populace. So, yeah, don't. That's a little too hubristic. And for that English guy in the swimming pool, for him to say, oh, you Americans, you don't have guns. Well, the reason why we have guns is because we kicked your butt out of our country because you guys were a little bit oppressive to us. That's the only way we could do it. Remember that? That's why we're free, and that's why America rules, two-time World War champion, right, America? And then let's say the Canadians make the same argument. In Canada, and I don't think they realize how much security we provide for them. If somebody rose up in Canada and started as that hard-knock communism where they went door-to-door seizing people, or they started creating labor camps, we would roll into your country in 2 seconds and free you. Like, you guys, your threat is made far less for autocracy and oppression because of the existence of America across your border. It is. In fact, all the Europeans, for sure. If that ever happened in your country, we'd have to bail you out yet again. And so... yeah, no, it's good that Americans are armed. I don't think Americans should ever say it can't happen here, because I'll tell you what, it can happen here for sure. And I don't think the argument, we have low guns, therefore we have low murder. Yeah, no. In the last 100 years, Europe, in its unarmed state, murdered 1,000 times the people that get murdered in America, right? Russia, too, 1,000 times. China, too, 1,000 times the people that got murdered. It's just it happened at the hands of the state, and it didn't happen at the hands of the private citizen. And so I would take private murder any day over autocracy and oppression. I will tell you that. If that were my two choices, I'd prefer no murder. I'd prefer us to love each other and live all happily ever after. But again, we as a fallen people with a fallen nature, we have to deal with reality here. And so this is Catholic Dad making you think about Americans have guns, but that's why autocracy will probably not happen here anytime soon, and oppression and labor camps and death camps. And so there you have it. And you just look at the countries that lecture us on guns. Like literally 70 years ago, they had death camps. So there you go. God bless. Take care. Get the Mass and pray the Daily Rosary.